Hi there and welcome to Planet Coaster. So a bit of a change this week. I've taken a break from my tropical park and dived straight into the new Planet Coaster Classic Rides DLC. There's 9 or 10 new rides in the pack, but the one I've been most interested in is the Macchina Classica. Now hopefully I've said that right, because there's variations on how you can pronounce Macchina, but I think it's Macchina. When I first saw this little car have been added to the game, my initial thought was that this would make a great ride based around the American dream, so think late 50s, early 60s. The scene I've set here is a bit cookie cutter, particularly the Midtown section, which is almost kind of Disney-esque, but I guess that's the point. Disneyland opened in 1955 and it captures perfectly the essence of that time. If we're talking classic rides, Disney is the epitome of that. So I started with the track ride and built the scenery up around that. Originally, I thought about having the track run down the middle of the street with a barrier either side and have the rest of the road open to the public. That's a great idea for a personal build. However, I created this ride with the intent on sharing my build for everyone to use, and since the blueprint creations delete your paths, I thought it would be a little too fiddly for people to recreate in their own parks. The ride station I wanted to be automobile themed, so it was either going to be a car showroom, an automobile museum or a repair garage. I ended up going with repair garage because that fits in best with the ride theme. I called it Bob's Garage. Don't ask me why, I have no idea. It came to me as a generic name of someone who may or may not own a garage. I've tried to keep the footprint of the whole ride quite tight, so there isn't a lot of room inside the ride station. There's enough room for safety barriers and some wall decor, which is enough to give the impression of a garage. So for the suburbs section, I took inspiration from housing I've seen in films from that era. I'd also be lying if I didn't say there was a little bit of Fallout 4 in there too, which itself is based on 1950s aesthetics. I played a heap of Fallout 4 a few years back, so it was difficult not to think of that game when building this section. I like the idea of the track looping around a focal point, then turning back on itself. It was quite funny actually. When I first built this, I had to delete and relay the track when I realised I'd had the car driving on the wrong side of the road. As a Brit, getting your head around driving on the right hand side can sometimes be an issue. So the Midtown section, I absolutely loved building this. For the past 6 months I've been focused on a tropical build, so lots of palm trees and pirates, in other words a lot of dull browns and greys. Playing with different architecture, the pretty flowers and especially different trees has been fun. This clock building, I haven't decided whether this is a station of some kind or a government building. The other buildings along this street are meant to be shops of some kind. I added the soda shop as this would have been prominent in a 1950s high street. This one I used the Studios DLC shop front and brownstone pieces where you also get to make nice window displays. This store is selling spooky couches, lamps and vases. The other store with this type of window has a suspicious piñata, keeping a close eye on the guests. I went with the parade day ambience here with the US flag paraphernalia and confetti. It's also the first time I finally found a use for those giant balloon floats. Initially I positioned these in the middle of the road, but they dominated the scene way too much. Kind of looked like some kind of Godzilla replication. Definitely not the ambience I was going for. This part of the ride I have the track bridging across the road into the station. I wanted to add a classic American diner that you can drive through, and only realised afterwards that the positioning of this isn't all that great with the bridge blocking some of the view. I tried fiddling around with the track to have the bridge sat behind the diner, but that meant moving the ride station, which in turn alters the entire course of the rest of the track, which I really didn't want to have to change. In the end, it's not ideal, but this isn't bad enough for me to start rebuilding the entire track from scratch. So after the diner, you leave the street and go into the elevated section of the track. This is a nice flyby of the queue path, so those waiting get an idea of what they're in for. I also added this little pond feature in the loop, which possibly would benefit from some kind of statue or feature in the middle. I covered the entire elevated section of track in this metal fencing, which is from the Vintage Pack DLC. This was a real pain to place and by far was the longest part of this build, since I had to place every single piece of the fence individually to match the curve and elevation of the track exactly. So in all, I'm happy with this nice little build, and I'm having a lot of fun with the new DLC. Next week I'll check out one of the other new rides, either in my main park or I may do a one-off build. If you want to check out this ride for yourself, it's now available on the Steam Workshop. There's a link to that in the description below. I figured we'd give it a test drive before ending off, so I'll leave you here. Thanks for watching, bye for now.